Hey guys, it's Sarah, and yep, I am back officially. I'm very, very happy to be back as well. So, the first thing that I wanted to get into as far as projects go is my reading album that I'm doing this year. I'm using this little 6x8 album to document all the books that I read in the year of 2019. And I did have to go back in January real quick and fill out the star rating for this card because I did have a couple people point out that I forgot to put the star rating on that one. And that one is for the Ken Follett book, World Without End. I did read that in January and it was a 5-star read. So, yeah, I just forgot to put the stars on there. So, that's something I'm going to be thinking about here and making sure that I get those star ratings on there because that's important. And so I'm going to get into February. Now, for February, I read a lot of books, a whole lot of books. And that is because I was reading for my children's literature class. So a lot of these are going to be middle grade. And then I have some adult books as well that I kind of threw in there that would help me break up the middle grade. So first I went ahead and stamped out all of my books here. Now this is a little book stamp that I'm using to document the number of book that I'm reading, and I just keep them in order. I like to do that throughout the year and keep track of how many books I read in the year. So I just stamped out all the numbers that I needed, and I end up needing two more. I miscounted for some reason. I'm not sure why. But I'm going to go ahead and get my books onto my cards that I've already picked. I pre-picked these a few weeks ago, actually. And I'm just trying to semi-color coordinate as much as I can using some Project Life cards. And I'm going to go ahead and get all of my books down with the numbers so that they stay in order. I don't want to mess up the order or anything, and kind of show you some of the cards I'm using. So that one there, I wanted the red border because there is red in the book cover, and I just ended up using one. I think that was a New Year's, maybe I think it said New Year's resolutions on it or start of a new year or something. So but I just needed the red. So that's kind of a good example of what I'm using things for. And so for this one, there was a little image that said loved on the bottom, but I went ahead and covered that up with the picture. So I'm just using some cards. I'm mainly looking for colors and trying to keep it as close to the book covers as I can. And that means covering up some of these cards, which, to me is totally fine. That's what they're there for. So I am going to go ahead and get all these numbers down, like I said, so that I don't get the order mixed up. And then I will start from the top and embellish the cards and do all my journaling and my star ratings and all of that good stuff. But I read some pretty good books this month, and I'll go ahead and talk about the books as I'm embellishing, and I'm using mostly die cuts. So I pull out all my die cuts and I have them next to me on the desk there, and I'm just gonna, rifle through my little die cut boxes and use whatever I can. And I'll also use some enamel dots as well. So I am getting close to the end here. I think I do two more and then realize I need two more. I'm just not sure how I ended up miscounting, but I did. So it's okay. And then my ATG runs out, so I have to change that. And yeah, this is where I realize I need two more. But as you can see, some of these are middle grade, like that one is, and then my next one is as well. And those are because I took a children's literature class, which I talked about on my channel earlier, because that's why I ended up taking a couple of months off of scrapbooking, because my class was very intense with the reading. I had to read 50 children's and middle grade books combined. So it was a lot of reading, especially towards the end, because that's when we did most of the middle grade stuff. And middle grade books, those things can get up to three or 400 pages. And I did read a few books like that. So you'll see those coming up later. But yeah, so it was a lot of reading. It was good, though. It was a good class. I actually really enjoyed it. You guys know I love my books. And okay, so I'm on the last one here. And this goes up to number 23. So at this point, at the end of February, I had read 23 books for the year so far. And that's pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to get started on the embellishing. So the first one that I have here is Kevin Hart's book, and it's I Can't Make This Up. And this one is one that I listened to on audiobook, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. I loved every single minute of this book, and the audiobook is great because he is the one who narrates it. So you can listen to him tell his own stories, and his comedy is obviously in there. And, the cadence of his voice is really unique, and the way he tells his jokes is great. And it was one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. I would listen to it again in a heartbeat. Like, that's how much I loved it. It was very funny, and I really like the way that, he uses humor to tell his stories, but he also ties them into life lessons and what he learned from these stories. So not only is it funny, but you actually also get something out of it. And he had some really, really great quotes in there as well. Like, I could have written down a whole bunch of quotes that he used. It was definitely a 5-star read for me, and it's probably going to be one of my favorites of the year. It was fantastic. And I'm really glad that I read it before we went and saw him no, I read this afterwards. Yeah, we saw him in the very beginning of January. He came to Pensacola, and so we drove over, and that was my husband's Christmas gift. And I ended up reading this after we saw him, but it was great. I did find a sticker in my little planner pack there that says "Keep It Together," and I wanted to put that on here because since I was listening to it on audio, and if I listened to it while I was out in public, I was laughing so much, and I was trying to keep myself together if I was around other people listening to this because I would just bust out laughing. I did it a couple times. I didn't always keep it together, but it was great. So if you are a Kevin Hart fan, I would highly recommend this book, and definitely listen to it on audiobook. I think you're going to get a lot more out of it than physically reading it. But it was fantastic. And again, it's probably going to be in my favorites of the year this year. So it was great. All right, the next one up is Ashante. This is by Gita Trelease. This was a early review book that I got from the publisher, which was awesome. And this one is a fantasy book that follows a pair of sisters who are living in Paris during the French Revolution. And they are just trying to make ends meet, having a bit of a hard time. And one of the sisters comes into a realization that she can practice magic. And she uses that to her advantage to disguise herself to be able to get into the Palace of Versailles. And this is when Marie Antoinette was there. So she's actually one of the characters. She's not a main character, but she's in it. And she uses her magic to go to the Palace of Versailles in order to gamble. And she kind of figures out a way that she can cheat at that so she can use it to her advantage and get some money for her and her sister. And there's also a love story that is interwoven in there. It does revolve around some hot air balloons as well, because her love interest is a hot air balloon operator, I guess you could say. And it was really good. I really, really liked it. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars, and it was great. Like, it was a surprise. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. So here for the star ratings, I end up making kind of a mistake. I wish I had started from the beginning and went, left to right instead of right to left, because it's not a full 5-star for me. But it's okay. I'll just do the half star, and I'm just going to use my pen if I ever do half stars. I do every so often, and I just colored in half of the star. So I'll do that whenever I need to. I don't do half stars too often, but when I do, I'll use my pen to just color it in. But I used a really old Studio Calico hot air balloon rub-on that I've had for years. And I was able to use that since it goes with the story. And there is that one. And now on to the next one. This is called Violent Ends. This is a short story anthology that was put together by Sean David Hutchinson. And this follows a school shooting. And what makes this one is unique is that there are 17 different perspectives in this story, and they are written by 17 different authors. And so each chapter is a different perspective from the same story, and it's written by a different author. So it was really cool. You got to see a whole bunch of different writing styles. You got to see a whole bunch of different perspectives. Some of the people were actually, involved in the shooting or were victims of the shooting. Some people were, family members. Some people were just seeing the aftermath, and that's it. So it was really interesting. And I read from a couple of perspectives from authors that I want to read more of their work now, because their perspectives were so unique and interesting. And It was really good. It was a hard read because I think anything involving a school shooting is going to be hard to read about, but it's also very important. And this was definitely a unique take on that. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. Some stories I definitely enjoyed more than others, but as a whole, I thought it was fantastic. And just, I've never read a book like that before. So I absolutely loved it. And I'm trying to find a word tile in here that says important, and I want it black because, I'm kind of going with black and red here, and I find one. So that works out nicely. And again, I'm just trying to make a dent in my die cuts with this album. So I'm just pulling out anything that has the color scheme I'm going for that would look good. So that's kind of where everything is going here. And I really, really enjoyed that one. So there is that. And then I'm going to go on to my next one here, which is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And Taylor Jenkins Reid is an author that is gaining a lot of popularity right now, mainly because of this book. This was kind of the first book of hers that was really talked about in the BookTube community and kind of made people start paying attention to her. And now she's one of the most talked about authors out there right now, at least in the BookTube community that I'm a part of as well. And I picked this book up and I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. It follows a woman named Evelyn Hugo. She is a Hollywood star from the 50s, I believe. This spans between the 50s and the 60s. And it's also a dual timeline because we're following Evelyn as an older woman, and she decides that she wants to tell her life story. And she had never really told anyone the full story of her life before, but she was a very famous person. I mean, we're talking, there were definitely vibes of probably Elizabeth Taylor, with all her marriages and stuff, but she does have 7 husbands, and she tells the story of each of those husbands and why they got married and what the benefits were. And, a lot of these people she married to help her get ahead, and it also helped him in some way. And that's why they never worked out, because they didn't actually marry for love. And then, throughout the story, you do find out who her true love was. And it was really, really good. Evelyn was such a flawed character, but I loved reading about her. So it was great. I definitely want to read more from that author. Okay, so next one is My Sister, the Serial Killer. This is by Oyenkin Breathwaite. I don't think I said that right. But this is a book that had been talked about as well quite a bit, and I was mildly interested in it. So this follows a set of sisters. One of them is a nurse in a doctor's office, and the other one is, she kind of has her own business. I think she's a sewer and she makes clothes and stuff, but she's very beautiful. And it's kind of emphasized that she gets a lot of things in her life kind of thrown at her or given to her because of her beauty. She goes through a lot of men, and she ends up killing a couple of them. And the other sister, the nurse, ends up helping her kind of cover it up because, the first time it happens, she calls her sister in a panic, doesn't know what to do. She's killed this man. What do you do? So she helps her clean up, and then it becomes a habit. So it was very interesting. It was a very short book. I read it really quickly, I think over the span of 2 days or something. So, but it was good. I gave it 4 stars. It didn't blow my mind, but it kept me interested the whole time. So I'm glad it was kind of a shorter one. If it were longer than that, I don't know if I would have given it quite a high rating, but it was good. And then next, I listened to the audiobook for Little Women, and this is one that I listened to for my class, and I had never read this book before, which is very interesting because I'm such a book lover, but I'd never read Little Women, which is kind of one of the ultimate classics, right? But now I have read it. I gave this one 3 stars, and I don't know, like, it was fine. I liked it, but I didn't love it, some of it was a little bit boring. I thought a lot of it probably could have been cut out a little. Like, I just felt it was too long for what was actually happening in the story. I didn't like the ending. I didn't like where the love interest went for Joe. I didn't like that at all. So that kind of ruined it for me a little bit. But it's okay. Now I can say that I have read Little Women. So this one is going in a 4x6 slot in my album. So because of that, I'm going to put it on a strip of just scrap paper and make sure that they stay together, almost like a 4x6 card. All right, so the next one is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, which is one of my favorite books of the year so far. I absolutely loved this book. I'm actually putting a stamp down there that says couldn't put this down because I could not put this down. I read this book so quickly, and it's a kind of a long one. It's over 400 pages. And I just flew through it. I could not get enough of the characters. So this follows a couple, and you get a dual timeline. So you kind of start out in, I would say, like, quote unquote today timeline, and it's Macy and Elliot, and Macy and Elliot have not spoken for 11 years, even though they were incredibly close as young adults. And you kind of go back and forth between the past and the present because, you know, in the present, they have run into each other randomly, and then they haven't spoken for 11 years. And so you go back in the past and you find out why, you know, like it starts from when they very first met, and then it goes through their relationship and things that happened. And then you find out why they're not speaking, but they're actually in the present trying to rekindle their relationship. And oh my gosh, was it good? I absolutely loved it. I couldn't get enough. I loved the characters so much. This is one of those books where when I was finished with it, I wanted to close it and then just open it back up from the beginning and read it all over again. I really did, because I was angry that it was over. I wanted more of the characters. I loved it so much. And Elliot is one of my favorite characters now. I loved it, and I cannot wait to read more from Christina Lauren. So okay, so the next one is This Is How It Always Is by Lori Frankel, and this one is a hard hitter. This one follows a young boy who is, I believe he's 4 or 5. He's like preschool, kindergarten age, and he tells his family that he wants to be a girl. And you follow this family and how they handle this, and how it affects their lives, basically, you know, not only the boy's life, but their life as well. And, you know, you see them go through the struggles, you see them deal with society and all that. And again, this one was really hard hitting. There are some quotes in here that I will never forget. I did give it 4 stars because there was a part towards the end that I didn't love, like kind of a good chunk, maybe a third of the book that I didn't like, the kind of the twist that it took. But other than that, the subject matter was very important, and it was heartbreaking just, you know, seeing this young boy get treated a certain way, and seeing the family have to deal with that and try to carry some of that burden as well. It was definitely tough, but there were some definite quotes in here that I still remember the way that those quotes made me feel. So it was very, very good. And this one is going to go on the back of this here, like a 4x6. So I'm just going to add it directly to the back there. And then the next one is Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. This is definitely a reread for me. I read this as a kid a whole bunch, and I read it again for my class. We had to do a poetry book, so that was kind of an easy pick for me because I love Shel Silverstein. And so I'm going to grab this really large die cut that says Totally Fun, because this definitely is a fun book. And I find a flower that kind of goes with that, so I'm going to use that too. And since this is so big, I'm not going to really put anything else down because, you know, this is going to take up a majority of the card here, but it's very fitting as well. And then I'm going to put the flower on there as well. And then I will do my star reading and my journaling. But, you know, this was definitely a 5-star read for me. I love Shel Silverstein and his poetry. It's so creative. And it was fun kind of revisiting some of these poems. And some of them I remembered. You know, I remember reading some of these poems as a kid. Not all of them, so that was interesting. But yeah, it was very, very good. Very nostalgic to read this. And I need to get my daughter Kaylin reading it as well, because she's old enough to be able to read those. Layla might be old enough too, actually. We're getting into chapter books with Layla. We're starting to get a little bit more comfortable with reading, so maybe I could get her to read a few of those too. But Okay, so there's that one. And then the next one is a book that was sent to me for review as well from the publisher, and it's called 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. And this one was kind of a letdown for me. I did not enjoy this one quite as much. And because of that, I grabbed the at a glance die cut that I just pulled out there. And then that bow there just matches the colors on the cover there really nicely. So this one is the second book by Sally Thorne, and the first one is called The Hating Game, and that book has been raved about constantly. I actually own that book. I haven't read it yet. But so many people love that book and it's their favorite. And so this one was pretty hyped up because it was her second book coming out. So everyone was excited to read more from her. But I would say the consensus as a whole in the community was a lot of people were let down by this one. They said it wasn't as good, definitely. So I do plan to still read the other one, even though I didn't like this one. But this one, I just had a really big problem with the characters. I didn't like the main characters at all. um, the way it was written, it almost seemed like I was missing some of the story as to why they were making some of their decisions and to why, kind of their dynamic together. I was missing things. And yeah, just the main character, the woman, just drove me absolutely nuts. I didn't understand the decisions that she made. Just so many things sat really wrong with me. And the way that she treated him, I even ventured to say when I did my review, I almost felt like sexism on her part. She treated him like he was an object, and I didn't like it at all. So yeah, it was, that was definitely a letdown, but that's okay. You're not going to win them all. Okay, so the next one is Echo, and this is by Pam Munoz Ryan, and I read this one for my class as well. And this one is a middle grade book that follows a magical harmonica. And you see this harmonica travel between a few different people and how it affects their lives, how it helps them through some tough situations. And in the end, it all really comes together nicely. And I really enjoyed this one. This one is kind of set around World War II, kind of that time frame. And it was really good. I did listen to this one on audio as well, and I would definitely recommend that one if it's something you're interested in, because you get the musical aspect of it. You can hear the songs being played that are mentioned on the harmonica, which was really cool. And there was one of the characters that this harmonica finds, and her part was just amazing. I absolutely loved it. I didn't love every single section of it, every single character story that it follows, but majority of them I did. So I did end up giving this one 4 stars, but I definitely loved the audiobook of it. It was very magical, and just the ending was so great because it just everything comes together so nicely, and I love the way that was handled. And it was cool. It was definitely a unique book. I had never read a book like this before. So that was very good. And I think that kids would really like it. But if you're going to read it, I would definitely recommend the audiobook if you can do that. So for this one, I used, a feather die cut there and then a circle and a bow. And I'm just trying to match some of the colors there. But I did use up that last bow that was from that package. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so the next one is The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff. This is a historical fiction, and it follows some women in World War II, and they signed up to be a part of a group of spies who are going to infiltrate Nazi Germany and spy for the British. Yes, I'm pretty positive that's right. Yeah. And this is a dual timeline as well. So, but the timelines are very close together. It's within a couple of years of each other, but you do bounce back and forth between a couple different characters. And oh my gosh, was this book good? It was so interesting. And I really found myself caring for the characters and, like what they were going through. And I absolutely loved it. I was interested the entire time. I could not wait to find out what happened to these women. And just knowing that this was actually based on real events, or, like there really were women who signed up to be spies. And it was incredibly dangerous, obviously. They were risking their lives. And it was, thrilling and heartbreaking at the same time. So I absolutely loved this one. I do love historical fiction, especially if it's set in the World War II time frame, and this was no exception. I absolutely loved it, and I gave this one 5 stars. And then I read another one for my class, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid by Jeff Kinney. And this one wasn't my favorite. It was definitely, I could see how young kids would enjoy this because it is told through the perspective of a middle schooler, and he's trying to navigate middle school. So because of that, I pulled out a book bag, die cut there, and then I have a ruler and like a little day of the week planner type thing. So that's kind of, I'm going to layer these up. But we follow our main character, Greg, and again, he is trying to navigate middle school. So I could definitely see why kids would enjoy this because they could relate to it for sure. I gave it 3 stars because it was fine. Greg definitely, his parents were present, which I really appreciated. It wasn't like, just Greg and his parents were barely there or whatever. He did get disciplined, but in the end, I didn't feel like it really taught any good lessons to kids. It didn't, he didn't learn from his mistakes as much as I would have wanted him to, for sure. So there is that. That was something I ended up kind of craving from it. So I gave it 3 stars, but I see the appeal for kids for this one. It was funny. And so that is that one. And then the next one is another one for my class, and it's Dog Man. This is by Dave Pilkey. Dave Pilkey wrote the Captain Underpants books as well. And this one is cool because this is a graphic novel that is, I'm using air quotes here, created by the boys in Captain Underpants, Harold and George. And this was like their very first comic that they did together besides Captain Underpants. So if you've seen the Captain Underpants movies, then you know what I'm talking about. So basically they wrote this in kindergarten together, and this was their first one. And this follows a police officer and a dog. They end up in an accident, and in order to save both their lives, they have to switch the heads and put the dog's head on the human's body and the human head on the dog body. And then you have Dog Man, and he's a cop. And it's pretty cute, you guys. I gave this one 4 stars. Like, I was surprised by how much I actually kind of enjoyed this. It was just adorable. It was funny. The artwork was great because it really looks like kindergartners, drew and wrote it. And I thought it was really unique. So it was cute. And then the last one that I read in February was The Promise of Stardust, and this is written by Priscilla Sibley. And this one is an adult book, and it follows a former NASA scientist and her husband, and they find themselves, the astronaut, so the woman, the wife, has an accident. And that happens in the very beginning of the book. She ends up in a coma because of this accident. And what happens is her husband, runs to the hospital, and she's in a coma. And then you follow kind of a medical legal battle that her husband is having with his mother, because his mother has legal medical decisions given to her based, for the wife. So you see them arguing because they do not agree on what they should do to proceed as far as the wife medically, even though she's in a coma. There's just some certain situations happening, and it was very interesting. And you go back and forth a little bit too, so you get to see the wife in the past as well. But it was good. I gave it 4 stars. I could not imagine being in that situation, and it was definitely something to make you think. So if you like medical dramas, I think you would probably like that one as well. Okay, and that is it for what I read in February. I'm going to give you close-ups here of all the books. And so I feel really good being back. I definitely had to dust off the cobwebs. This one took me quite a while. I cut out a lot, believe me. Just being indecisive and trying to figure things out. But it's okay. I'll get my groove back, and I will be back again very soon with some more projects for you. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you again soon. Bye.